What's going on, guys? Stevie from the Minimasters here, and today I'm going to show you how to mount a trans temperature gauge in your truck. So as you guys know, if you watch this channel enough, that I rebuilt the transmission not too long ago, and I'd like to keep an eye on the temperature because, well, that's what kills the transmission. So I picked up one of these Autometer half sweep transmission temperature gauges and decided I'm going to mount it in the dash. So here's what I have going for you. I made this plate myself and I mounted it here to the dash with bolts. I think bolts make for a better finish, so consider that. And that's where it's going to go. But there's two things that got to happen. It's got to be wired in and the sensor has to go in. So I'm going to show you how the sensor goes. So this is the driver's side of the transmission. Okay. And this is a 4R70W/AODE transmission. So you pretty much can match it up with a lot of F150s that have this test port here. But you're going to pull the plug out, some transmission fluid's going to leak. But all you have to do is screw the sensor back in. And don't worry, the sensor is kind of long, but there's plenty of room in here. It won't impede any of the operations of the transmission. I've been driving around for weeks with this thing plugged in there. Just be sure to put Teflon tape on it. So, back up into the cab for the wiring. All right, so to get access to our wiring, you're gonna wanna take this whole bezel off here. So if you haven't been with me for some of my past videos, you're gonna wanna take this headlight knob off. That little piece of steel in there, you're gonna wanna push back and pull this at the same time the knob will come off. Once that is off, you're gonna undo these screws that are behind these fascia plates. Once those are out, then you just pop this whole panel off. It's held in by some little tension brackets. That will give us access to the whole back side of the bezel so that we can get at this. Now, we're gonna go over some wiring real quick so we know what we're looking for. So this is the back of the gauge, okay? So as you can see, that says 12 volt and there's a light, and then this one says ground. So your grounds, which are both these that I've actually got connected, they just need to go to a good ground source. This 12 volt next to the light has to go to something that connects to the lighting system in your truck, okay? That way, you know, when you pull the lights on and your dash lights light up, this will light up as well, okay? The other ones you have to worry about are down here. So one of them is to the sensor, which is that S, okay? So that's just a wire that runs down to that probe I showed you a minute earlier. And the I goes to your ignition source, okay? This is where most people would actually run one to the battery under their hood and maybe put a switch. I'm gonna wire it so as soon as you turn your key, there is power to this guy, which is how you're gonna want it, and that's how the rest of your gauges function. So I'm gonna take this panel off and we're gonna get wiring. So here we are, the dash bezel is off and we have access to everything here. So this is your headlight and control. So remember, it pulls out and you can turn it. So for this case, you're just going to push it in. You're gonna have to take these two screws out here so we get access to those wires. Now, before we get into that, I'm gonna cover how to find an ignition source. Like I said, I want this to work so that when you turn the key on, it powers this immediately. I don't want you to have to flip a switch and all that other stuff. I want this to be very natural, very stock. So how we're gonna do that is we're gonna find something here that is not on, that when it's ignition. So this is a test probe, or test light as some people call it. All you do is hook it to a good ground. So I just hook it here to the hinge, and you touch the things and that light should light up if it has power. So you're gonna go to your fuels panel and you're just gonna poke around until you find something. See that? See, that draws power even when the key is off. So if you were to hook your transmission temperature gauge up to that wire, it would always be on. We don't want that. So I've already run these tests, so I've figured out that I actually want to run it to these two here. As you can see, they don't light up, okay? And it just so happens these are what illuminate the gauges. Now, so the test probe is off. I'm going to turn the key. So now everything's on. And now my test light lights up. That tells me when I turn the key, it will power the gauge. So just in case, you don't have to run it to, you know, these fuses, but in future, if you ever want to run any auxiliary lights, gauges, and you want them to come on when you turn the switch, just poke around in here with a test light until you find something that's off. So we're on. In this case, the key is on and the light's on. That's what we want. So I'm going to pull these 2 screws out and we'll look at this wiring. All right, so here we are, 2 screws out. Pretty simple. I probably should have mentioned, in order to get the bezel off over there, you had to unplug the fuel tank switches. It's just simple as reaching behind there with a screwdriver and kind of prying up that, and it pops right off. Now remember, do not forget to plug that in or your truck won't start, because that's what, you know, turns all your fuel pumps on and neither's on. So anyway, here is your headlights switch, and there's all your wires. Now, it just so happens somebody has already wired into this truck, and I have since wired it to the proper wires, so I'm already set up. But for this purpose, I'm going to show you how I went about it. So right now, there is power going to this. And what you're going to do, like we did before, is you're going to take a test light and you're going to touch. So right now, the key is off and this is getting power. So we don't want our gauge hooked up to that, or we'll always be on. So you're going to poke around until you find something that isn't. So I happen to know that this big black wire here in the center doesn't get power. This red and yellow one doesn't, and of course the one that I'm already wired up to, which is this one here, it's a blue and white, that one doesn't get power either. Now I'm going to turn the key, lights are on, okay, still no power, right? Because this is where we want our thing to power on from. Now I'm going to pull this out. Okay, so just your auxiliary lights and your dash should light up. Now let's poke around. Okay, see, lights up, and this other one lights up. Okay, now let's just say you want the light only on when the headlights are on. Let's pull it out for the last pull. That red and yellow, the red comes on. So that already tells you, in future, is say you want a light bar or something like that, and you want it to be on when when your actual headlights are on, you hook it up to that. If you want it to come on with your auxiliary lights, then you can hook it up to these 2. Okay? If you ever do cab lights hook up to this. As a matter of fact, that's what this one splice is right here. That's for the cab lights. So that's what we're going to wire into. Now, for this purpose, what you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to cut a section of the wire out and solder a wire on there. So I soldered on this spade here, and that sticks off there. Now, because I only have this one already plugged in here, my other wire that's going to go to the gauge is actually going to splice into this red wire here, which actually goes to my cab lights. That way I don't have to add all these extra spades and things right there. So I'm going to get this wiring taken care of to the gauge, and then we're going to go and work on that one. So here we are. I soldered up our new wire. So you can see right there, that joint. It runs all the way over here. I've got my extra there. I'm not going to do anything with that end. I'm just going to go to our next step. So like I said, we're going to run a wire from this fuse here, which, just in case you're curious, on your panel here, it's number 17. Okay? So I'm sure you're probably thinking, well, this whole thing's going to kind of pull out and I'll get to the backside. No, Ford was not that nice. In order to get at those wires, you're going to have to go around the back. Okay? So this part gets tricky. So here we go. Light. So you're going to want to go on your back, slide in here, and you see that wire here, it's a red and yellow. If you follow it, it's right here along the side where the 17th fuse plugs in. We're going to splice into this wire. Now, I would show you the test light and show you that that comes on, you know, when you turn the key, but my hands are kind of full and it's kind of cramped down here. But just know, this is the one. If you need to check, all I did was I stripped some of the jacketing away from the wire and put a test light to it, turned the key, and of course the ignition showed that it was on. Okay, if you do snag the wrong wire, all you have to do is put some tape back on it, and that's enough to seal it off. In this case, you can use one of those crimp splicers. I'm going to see if I can get in here and cut and solder a spade in there, and we'll go from there. So here we are, guys. I got all my wires run over the steering wheel, and they're just hanging there. ready for me to hook them up. So last we were working on was getting the power wire for our ignition over to here. Okay, now before it reaches your gauge, you have to put this guy in here. This is a fuse. They recommend a 4 amp quick acting fuse, and basically I'll show you what it looks like without taking it apart. You see those like tubular glass fuses in there? That's what those are. Okay, so they recommend having a fuse between the gauge and your power source. So somewhere in there that you feel comfortable with, you're going to want to wire this guy in there. I highly doubt this is going to blow, but like I said, it's worthwhile putting in there. So put it on your dash, put it under your dash, whatever. Okay, so that's the power wire. The other thing we're going to have to do is the grounds. So the grounds, you're going to want to run this wire back through all this and down here. Right here is a ground screw. You can hook it up to here, but I think that bolt is a little too large for the eye holes that I have, okay, for 18 gauge wire. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a self-tapping screw and just put my own ground screw into the firewall. A ground screw just has to go wherever there's bare metal, and it goes and connects to the frame. So that's the ground. The last wire you need to work on goes to the sender, okay? That's what I have spooled up right here. So what you're going to do, same thing, run it down through underneath your dash, and then you're going to want to put it through the firewall. Do not put it through the floor, because that's how you get water and junk up into your truck. Put it through the firewall. You'll see those 2 green wires that I have right there. They actually go to a hole that I drilled to the firewall and actually run out for another light that's under the hood. Now, when you drill anything to the firewall, you're going to want to put some kind of insulator. So I also have an insulator there, because if not, it'll rub the wire and you'll have a ground issue. But it's as simple as running it down to the sender down there, and then just, you know, the sender's got 2 little bolts on it. You just undo one of those, and you take your little eye pieces here, slip it on, and you're good to go. Simple, okay? I'm not going to show you how to run the wire down to the center, because to me that's just your imagination and how you want to do it. Same with the ground. But I really wanted to show you was how to hook the 2 power wires up, so that number 1, the gauge will be powered, number 2, the actual backlighting for the gauge would be on as well. I'm going to put everything back together, bring you guys back, show you what it looks like when it's finished. All right guys, so here we are, all mounted, and as you can see, there's no wires down below, nothing ugly. This is completely stock. So when you come in, it's just gonna look really, really nice. All right. But what it looks, so it doesn't work. So here we go. Backlighting off. And 1 pull. And it lights up. Okay. 2 pulls, headlights are on, everything's still on. Now we'll turn it on. Now, as you see, I was driving my truck earlier, so it shot back up to about 100 there. Okay. But it works. Everything else reading the way it should be. And then here we go. We'll shut the lights off. Boom. So guys, as you can see, it's not too difficult putting one of these gauges in your truck once you know what wires to splice it into, how to find them, and all that kind of jazz. Okay, so hopefully you'll give this one a shot yourself. You can actually put a lot of different gauges in your truck, more so than what the factory gives you, that can help you out a lot. Please consider the trans temperature gauge. So if you like this video, hit the like button down there, hit the subscribe icon over here. Check out some of my other videos I've got over here. I've got a lot of good stuff out there and more to come. Stevie from the Minimasters, thanks for watching.